What's up guys, welcome back to Unlimited Reads. My name is Chris and today I'll be sharing with you the best books I've read this year. Now given that I've read 75 books this year, I was originally going to pick my top 10 books, but I just can't do that because I've had such an awesome year in reading that I've decided to do a top 20. That's how awesome my year has been for reading. There are just too many books. I was going to do the top 10 and say 4 or 5 honourable mentions, but those ones I wanted to put honourable mentions on for, they're just too good not to include in a ranking. So this is going to be a top 20 ranking for the best books of this year. Now before I go into the books, now what I'm going to be doing with the top 20 ranking is splitting the video into 2 parts. So the first part I'm going to do the books all ranked from 20 to 11, and then part 2, which will come a day or two later up on the channel, will be from 10 to 1. But before I get into the first 20 books, I do need to give a shout out to Mike from over at Mike's Book Reviews. Just recently he has indicated that he wants to do a live chat, but before he does that he wants to hit 85,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Now he needs 350 more to do that, and I thought, look, I'm going to give him a mention because myself, along with other booktubers, would love to see him get there because he is such an awesome guy. His channel is great. He's my #1 booktuber that I follow religiously. And if you haven't checked out his channel, I'm going to include a link below in the description because he does book reviews, he does science fiction, he does fantasy, he does a little bit of horror. He does very, very good Stephen King content, and recently he has been doing tier lists for all the Stephen King books. I think he's just finished his 3rd part, and he is honest about his reviews. He doesn't bullshit you. If you watch his channel, have your wallet ready because he can be quite influential on what you purchase, because his enthusiasm for books is very, very contagious, and it's thanks to him that I first got into booktubing and doing my own stuff anyway. He did inspire me to start my own channel. So please check him out, give him a like and subscribe, and let's help him get there to the 85,000 subs so that he can do a live Q&A, which he wants to do. So as I said, the description is below, and go check him out. Alright guys, let's kick off this countdown with number 20. And at number 20, I have picked Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. This book I had read a long time ago when I was I think I was in grade 6 at the time, when I was about 12 or 13, so I had forgotten a lot of what the book was about, and I only just reread it this year. But it certainly deserves a top 20 spot because it scared the hell out of me. The 2 characters, Jim Nightshade and Will Halloway, are the kids who experience Mr. Dark's carnival when it comes to town. This carnival is as creepy as F. It is on the hunt for souls, innocent souls, and it tries to possess Will and Jim, and there are a lot of good things that actually happen, a lot of creepy things that happen, especially with the carousel, which has the power to age and de-age you, depending if you go clockwise or anti-clockwise, which is a very, very frightening prospect. If you stay on it too long, you can go from an adult to a baby. It's a really, really creepy idea. And the characters from the carnival are all very, very scary. So as an adult, it really unsettled me, but it was a really good read nonetheless, and I'm certainly glad I chose to read that one this year as part of my 10 classics that I did want to read in 2022. At number 19, we have The Curfew by T.M. Logan. He's been around for quite a number of years now. I discovered him about 3 years ago when I picked up a copy of Lies, which was his first novel. He is great at writing psychological standalone thrillers, and his latest book, The Curfew, was great. It involved a mystery of a local girl who disappeared, and there were many, many suspects that seemingly were involved in the disappearance, and T.M. Logan, or Tim Logan, really crafts the story very well, where he keeps you guessing right till the end, and you just don't expect who the culprit is. And he is a first day buy for me, an automatic buy whenever he brings out a new book, and he does have a new book coming out in March called The Mother. which I can't wait for. I've already pre-ordered that, and given that I've already spoken to an author on the channel, he's going to be my next pick, and I'm going to reach out to Tim to see if he can make time in his busy schedule early next year to come on the channel for a chat. So we'll just see if I can pull that one off. At number 18, we have Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This was a fantastic read. It was a perfect introduction to a really good character for me. She drew me in with her prose very, very quickly, and I had a great rapport with Fitz, who is a fantastic character, and it's the perfect origin story in my opinion. I thought the magic system was very, very original and compelling, and ripped through it in no time. And then I went straight on to Royal Assassin, which I equally enjoyed, but I enjoyed Assassin's Apprentice that bit more. So Royal Assassin didn't actually make it into the top 20, but I do need to finish Assassin's Quest at some point, and I plan on doing that. As to when, I'm not sure. It's been shelved, but it certainly hasn't been DNF'd, but I do plan on going back to it. And once I go back to it and finish it, then I'll allow myself to start the Live Ship Traders. So that's the pact I've made with myself. Alright, now coming in at number 17, we have Dark Beginnings, which is a prequel novella by Michael Robertson Jr. for the Lance Brody Supernatural suspense series, which involves a teenage boy, Lance Brody, who was conceived in a graveyard of all places, has a great relationship with his mother, and he has a unique gift to speak with the dead, among other things. Now, unfortunately, with that sort of gift, you can receive unwanted attention from evil beings, which you know, for evil beings, Lance is like a beacon that they're attracted to, like a moth to a flame, which, as you can imagine, can cause all sorts of trouble. You can draw subtle parallels to Carol Ann from Poltergeist. The Reverend Cain was attracted by her life force and her inner white light. This is the same sort of thing with Lance, and he has to deal with that. He's very, very isolated. He graduates high school, but all his friends go off to college, and he stays in the same small town because he feels compelled to do that. And I followed that up immediately with Dark Game, which was the first novel of the series, and there are 6 other novels that I'm going to binge as well. But he's such a fascinating character that I couldn't not include him in the top 20. At number 16, we have Mine by Robert McCammon. Now, this book was great. I became a Robert McCammon fan just this year, having read Boy's Life, Swan Song, and Blue World, which was his collection of short stories, and this book was fantastic. I'm going to read his next book, Stinger, early next year. Can't wait to get into that. And this book was about a woman who goes by the name of Mary Terror. She is a radical from the 60s, living in the 80s under the delusion that she needs to bring to her old terrorist cell leader, Lord Jack, their son. So that compels her to kidnap a baby boy and travel across America to California so that they can be together. But you know, something like that, plans like that can go wrong, especially when you have a desperate mother who wants her baby back for obvious reasons and pursues her across America. And there are so many intense scenes in this book. The beginning of the book is very, very confronting, and when I reviewed the book recently on the channel, I urged people to just read past it. It's very, very graphic, but I guarantee once you read past it, the whole book just flies. It is the perfect thriller in my opinion, and a very deserving spot at number 16. At number 15, we have No One Gets Out Alive by Adam Neville, which is a horror novel of about 600 pages. So it is pretty lengthy, but still enjoyable. And this is heavily steeped in Celtic mythology, which is very, very creepy, and involves a young girl who is destitute and finds that she has no choice but to stay in this boarding house, which is the home of unsavory characters with mysterious happenings and ghostly apparitions, and she gets terrorized. And the interesting thing about this novel is there's 2 separate parts to it. 2/3 of the book is made up of what her experiences are like in the house at that point in her life, and the second part of the book jumps ahead by quite a few years, where things quite aren't resolved with what happened earlier in her life. It's a really, really good novel. It was adapted by Netflix, and I made the mistake of watching the Netflix movie after reading the book. the movie was absolute rubbish. The book is set in England. The movie was set in the US and had nothing to do with the Celtic mythology or anything like that. I think they used Native American mythology, which is completely different to the book, and the acting was shit, and it just, you know, halfway through I turned it off. It was absolute rubbish. And but the book, however, was really good. I reviewed it on the channel early in the year and really enjoyed that. So a pretty good entry at number 15. Okay, coming in at number 14, we have The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This was fantastic. It's about a girl who is on the verge of death. She's on that threshold. She's contemplating committing suicide, and she's on that plane between the living and the dead in her own version of purgatory. Now, her purgatory looks like a really big library. So there's all these books that contain all different alternate lives that could have been had she made different decisions along the way. And it really explores very well the moral that there is never ever any perfect life. Life is what you make it, for better or worse. And she has the ability to actually jump into any of these lives she likes just to see what happens, and she explores quite a few of these lives in the book, and at the end arrives at the conclusion that, look, the ultimate life she chooses isn't that bad, but any life she chooses has ramifications depending on the decisions she makes. And you know, anything to do with alternate realities and time travel and all that stuff, I'm completely all in, and I was glad I picked it up because it's something, you know, I haven't read anything of Matt Haig's before. And the premise was fascinating to me, and I couldn't help but pick it up, and I'm glad I did because it certainly ranks pretty high in my top 20. At number 13, we have Upgrade by Blake Crouch. I pre-ordered this because I've become a Blake Crouch fan this year as well, after having read the Wayward Pines trilogy, which got me absolutely hooked. This is about how genes can be hacked and how that everything can be improved, from intellectual ability to physical prowess, reflexes, you know, reading ability, sight, hearing, sound, all that stuff can be amplified, which is very frightening in itself. Now, he doesn't have a choice with this. The main character Logan wakes up and he is becoming enhanced, and he's evolving, and he has to stop a big threat of having these upgrades done to the entire population. So it was really compelling. The narrative pace was great. It was quick. His writing style is very addictive. You can pretty much read all his books in 1 to 2 sittings, and you have to keep turning the pages to find out what's going on. Even though there are science fiction ideas and principles in his books, it's still very accessible, and you don't have very big info dumps or anything like that. It's all about characters that drive the story, rather than you getting embroiled up in all sorts of technology, terminology, and all that sort of stuff. He makes the story very accessible, that anyone can read. You don't have to have a degree in astrophysics or anything like that to read these books, but they are just fantastic, and I can't wait to read what he's got coming out next, whatever that is, and hopefully next year we'll see another Blake Crouch book. Alright, so at the number 12 spot we have Of Mice and Men, another one of the classics that I really wanted to read this year, and I'm so glad I did. I mean, we were forced to read it in high school, and it was a very long time ago, so I remember it vaguely, and I'm just glad I picked it up again. This made me cry at the end. It's a very tragic story. I read it in a single afternoon. It explores the complex relationship between George and Lenny. They're two drifters who travel from ranch to ranch looking for work, but unfortunately, due to Lenny's intellectual disability, they find they get into trouble, and you know, no fault of Lenny's, he can't help how he is. But the story is at a time in the recession where intellectual disability had a very heavy stigma about it, and there was a lot of judgment, and people jumped to conclusions, and were very quick to act on someone that couldn't help their condition. However, after getting into trouble in their latest job, ultimately George is faced with the heartbreaking, impossible decision of what he does at the end of the book. And you know, George has a pretty big cross to bear in this one, and he has to make a life-altering decision which will haunt him forever. It's just a complete punch in the guts story, which is very, very short but very, very powerful. And it's one of the best books I've ever read, and definitely deserves a number 12 spot in my top 20. But it's really funny how when you're forced to read a book as part of the school's curriculum in high school, you don't appreciate it like you would when you're an adult and you come back to it. You develop a more profound appreciation for these classics, which is what it's been all about for me this year, branching out and stepping outside my comfort zone to experience new things rather than just reading thrillers and horror my whole life. So certainly will never ever regret reading that one, and it's one I'll probably end up reading every few years. But when you're a high school kid, you don't sort of have these views on it until you are a lot more mature and you can appreciate these kinds of works, which is fantastic. Okay, now coming to the end of part 1 of this countdown. Now at number 11 we have Sword of God, written by Mark Dawson, as book number 5 in the John Milton series. This is a fantastic series that I discovered a couple of years ago, where John Milton is an ex-MI6 assassin who has had a fairly long career in making kill shots for his government. Now there is a particular assignment at the start of the first book where once he completes the job he has a crisis of conscience. Buried deep inside his assassin's persona, he still has a conscience and he has guilt, and it forces him to leave MI6 and just say see you later. But unfortunately MI6 don't see it that way. You can't just resign from the MI6 to ultimately escape your career from MI6. It's either a death in the field or a bullet to the head from your superiors. It's very, very harsh. So what happens is he escapes and he gets hunted for a little while from other MI6 operatives. As the series goes on though, an old friend of his takes up the top spot in MI6 and cuts him a break and calls off the assassins and just lets him go. John Milton is very, very conflicted. He feels that he needs to redeem himself. He's tried to get rid of his demons by drinking alcohol, which hasn't really worked. So what he's done, he's tried to turn things around by helping people and giving back, much like the Equalizer from the 80s, where he helps the innocent, and every time he performs a good deed he hopes to make amends at some point, and he ditches the bottle and he relies heavily on AA meetings and that sort of thing to try and stop those urges. So he's a very, very fascinating character. Now in Sword of God we find him in rural Michigan, where he comes across a small town where it's mainly run by religious fundamentalists, and they're a very, very manic group. And I won't spoil anything here, but at the end of the story I think what makes this one a real favourite of mine is John Milton isn't invincible. He really gets hurt in this one. He goes through the ringer because he keeps his promise to come back and rescue a local girl, and that's a really, really good character trait in my opinion, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And I really, really enjoyed the beginning of this book because it had some First Blood overtones there, which a nod to the First Blood movie, which I found very, very good. And John Milton is just a complete badass. And I remember after finishing that I immediately picked up Salvation Row, which was the follow-up, where he comes up against a rogue assassin, which was very good as well. But certainly this one definitely deserves my number 11 spot. So there you go guys, that is it for part 1 of my top 20 countdown. Hope you enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun to compile the list, and in the next couple of days I will have part 2 going up, which is the business end of the proceedings, where I'll be counting from 10 to 1. And let me tell you that the number 1 spot, to pick my favourite book of 2022, was no easy task. I had to spend days considering what my favourite book of 2022 will be. So stay tuned, that'll be in the next video, don't miss that. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to check out Mike's book reviews. It is a fantastic channel and you'll get fantastic value with that. But yeah, until the next video guys, in part 2, I'll see you later.